Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. The first 1,000 people who click the link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. For all that it served as the origin of that particular brand of truly punishing, oppressive difficulty that came to define its eventual franchise, there's something oddly, delightfully comforting about returning to Demon's Souls in the form of Bluepoint's recent remake. It almost feels quaint. Sure, it's a truly loving recreation of 2009's cult hit, but considering where From Software would take the series from there, Demon's Souls still feels like a bit of a mishmash of disparate elements from Western dark fantasy, rather than the more singular aesthetic vision of their later titles. Even with Bluepoint's newly applied and stunning coat of paint, there's still that aura of a team working it out as they went along. It feels charmingly scrappy, like they knew they were onto something special here. And even mechanically, I think there's a reason I haven't been seeing quite so much fervour surrounding the whole "does Souls need an easy mode" discussion that always pops up with these games. I mean, for one, the game does have an easy mode of sorts, multiple in fact. You could make the argument though that throughout the series' release timeline, we've seen a general progression away from build diversity towards a greater focus on intense speed and rhythm. What's that? You prefer using a shield or attacking from a distance? Too bad, keep up. You were never into the precise timing required of the parry mechanic? Well, prepare to do a lot more of it immediately. And by comparison, don't get me wrong, Demon's Souls is still a difficult game, but after having spent years practicing that weighty, animation-focused combat system across multiple titles, training myself to keep pace with the escalation of speed, and becoming more confident and comfortable with somewhat riskier playstyles, to go back to where it all began with these slow, hulking bosses with near unlimited healing items and the same types of area you've traversed in countless other Souls games, kinda feels a bit like putting the training wheels back on. I took my time with this remake, but in terms of total play hours relative to the series, I blasted through Demon's Souls. But it's not purely combat focused either. A large part of the original's difficulty when it released in 2009 was in just how inscrutable so much of its inner workings actually were. The quirks of its world design and the deliberately shadowy delivery of its story, explaining almost nothing about its wealth of systems and lore, and demanding that players meet the game on its own strict terms. From Software had created a truly weird game for its time, the many, many mysteries of which by now have kind of been solved. See, the world is not as it was back then. Gaming on YouTube was still largely finding its feet. Information about how to beat bosses or unlock items or concepts like world and character tendency was often buried within some obscure game fact, written by extremely dedicated players and read by few. Now though, we have a share button right on the PS5 controller. Search "what's this" and "how to beat that," and you'll be greeted immediately with all the information you could possibly need in easily digestible video form. But trust me when I say that even all these years later, none of this detracts from the game's very real charm or its utterly unique place in the series. Rather, it just adds to my complete fascination with it. The game still oozes atmosphere from every one of its many pixely pores, aided in no small part by Bluepoint's keen eye for detail and their well-proven ability to work wonders with the new tech before them, breathing tremendous life, or more accurately, a convincing decay into these environments in a way that 2009 FromSoft on the PS3 would never have been able to achieve. The tragic beauty of Boletaria, draped in a tarpaulin of solemnity and quiet despair, that feeling that you're just one minor cog in a world that is so much bigger than you, all those elements that so enraptured me with the series in the first place are so crisp, so tangible here. The game looks so good that you can almost smell your surroundings. Many people, perhaps understandably, see the series really starting at Dark Souls, but it's become particularly evident thanks to the increased fidelity of this remake just how key Demon's Souls really is to the series' identity. Pardon the pun, but it really feels like the nexus point of the series, with Bluepoint managing to dig up and bring to the surface all these aesthetic fragments buried within, that would later be focused on more eminently in future titles. The more refined dark fantasy tropes of its sequel, the perhaps otherworldly qualities that would become more of a focus in 2 and 3, and thanks to the remake's incredible use of darkness and contrast, I mean, it's perhaps the first time pitch black has been used as a marker of of tense atmosphere in the series rather than just a bullshit obstacle, the ironically named Prison of Hope truly becomes the agonizingly claustrophobic Lovecraftian nightmare it was always meant to be, recalling nothing if not the institutional horror of an environment like Byrgenwerth. I mean, just God, everything about this remake was an absolute joy for me. I can sincerely say I loved every minute of it. After venturing for so many years into this wild, ever-developing new genre, returning to where it started felt like coming home. At once a refreshingly meaty game to sink my teeth into at the launch of a new console, and a chance to take stock of how far the series has come. It was so much fun going into this game and thinking, hey, I know how this all works in a way that I totally didn't before. Upgrading weapons, secret areas, NPC quest lines, it all felt decidedly straightforward here, like that barrier to entry was now diminished somehow. That said, this also speaks to the fact that Demon's Souls feels so much more overtly gamey than what would follow. Indeed, I feel like some fans of the later titles that didn't get the chance to play the PS3 original might take issue with the fragmented structure of the game's world, given that just a couple of years later, FromSoft would go on to develop one of the best examples of interconnected world design I can think of. But I think it's precisely this comparatively more straight-ahead approach that was what allowed me to so take my time and really breathe in the game's atmosphere. There's a delightful briskness to the way Demon's Souls is laid out. It's probably the one game in the series where being able to warp to any archstone from early on made the most sense. If you're struggling with one area, then you have way more flexibility as to what you can do next. There are far less encounters where it feels like you're just banging your head against the wall because, well, you have potentially 4 other options to choose from. These comparatively bite-sized levels all offer unique challenges in terms of enemy types and environmental hazards, but all seem to be far more equally balanced than in areas in other games, designed so that these challenges can be tackled in potentially any order. And you know, I remember that idea of starting at the very beginning of a level upon death, with all of the enemies respawned and only one chance to get your accumulated currency back with less health than before, seeming utterly absurd when the game first released. But even with the relative lack of shortcuts per area here, maybe 1 or 2 at most, this time around that voyage doesn't seem nearly as daunting. You cautiously get your bearings the first time round, and subsequently can more or less barrel through to where you were previously. With that in mind, there were very few points at which the difficulty truly spiked for me until more or less the very end. But it also unexpectedly placed greater emphasis on exploration, a more consistent feeling of progression, rather than in other games where I would often feel like my only way forward was behind a particularly tough boss, and my only option was to continually slog against it. And sure, on the tech side of things, while Bluepoint wisely goes the opposite route to Astro's Playroom in how the game limits the newly emphasized haptic feedback to surprisingly effective heartbeats during boss battles, rather than bombarding your hands with distracting sensory info at every turn, what Demon's Souls really exemplifies is the power of the PS5's SSD, bringing into stark focus just how much of that difficulty and frustration in pushing forward in these games came not necessarily from the challenge of the bosses, but the now completely absent load times as you waited to respawn. Demon's Souls was always a really fantastic game, but Bluepoint's remake makes it far easier to love. Much like the decay and sorrow hanging over its world of Boletaria, Demon's Souls is an equally melancholic indicator of just how much time has passed since 2009, how dramatically the world of games has shifted in that period, and how the Souls series has become such a driving force of that change. I mean, Demon's Souls was originally a hugely obscure game, and here we are now, over a decade later, where it's somehow the defining launch title of Sony's new hardware, and it was really cool to reflect on all of that from a technical and industry perspective. But as I described this remake as a far breezier experience, I was constantly finding myself confronting the fact that these were environments and encounters that previously would take me forever to beat, that now I was often clearing in one shot. And while the answer is almost definitely somewhere in the middle, it did beg the question nonetheless. Is Demon's Souls truly a far easier time than future titles? Or, you know, is there the possibility that I might have gotten slightly better at understanding these games over the years? All of this is to say that, as is becoming more frequently the case on this channel of late, the real change that the Demon's Souls remake exemplified to me was far more personal. The Souls series, without question, has changed my life. It was the series that kickstarted my channel on the road to the immensely minor popularity that I currently inhabit. In all seriousness, it laid the groundwork for me being able to put as much time and effort into this whole endeavour as I do. But further, as many of you know, thanks to a particular video that, like all of my older videos, I kind of hate now, the series gave me purpose way before that. It kept me focused and alert when my body and mind felt like they were turning on me. It gave me a substantial goal to train and fight towards when everything else in my life felt so aimless. And importantly, it taught me that it was alright to fail, and encouraged me to keep going when I felt most trapped and alone, that the satisfaction of victory would be worth the struggle to get there. I constantly doubt myself over every video I put out there, but that one specifically, because now more than ever, I can feel myself being nipped at by those clawing hands ready to drag me back to some harrowingly low point. I won't lie, often I feel like I'm already totally submerged in that tar-like despair. Perhaps it's no coincidence then that as I'm feeling like this, I'm finding so much joy in one more game from a series that has previously allowed me to feel like I can pull myself out of that hole to some extent. But this Demon's Souls remake in particular, rather than serving as its own new mountain to climb in and of itself, actually feels more akin to something like a victory lap. A reminder of how far I've already come since those dark days when I discovered the franchise. It's not only the most straightforward presentation of the series' trademark weighty and punishing combat system, not only the most staggering a Souls game has ever looked in terms of raw fidelity, but in this year of all years, it's been the nudge that I kind of needed at this point. To say that even when things look tougher than they have in a long time, you can get through this. You've gotten through worse many times before. And maybe rather than masochistically engaging in one more go-around of Sisyphean torment to prove that you can, maybe it's good every once in a while to have an experience that lets you savour in the progress you've already made. And speaking of personal progress, why not take the next step in your creative journey like millions of others already are with today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creative and curious people. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity with Skillshare's inspiring online classes, on topics including illustration, photography, video design, and more. Do you enjoy how Demon's Souls trains you to get better at its combat? Why not train yourself in artistic expression with Learn How to Draw, a mindset, method, and exercise with illustrator Yuko Shimizu, a really nice class that does away with academic approaches to drawing in favour of practical exercises designed to inject a real sense of fun into the process. What's more, Skillshare offers classes designed for real life and all the circumstances that come with it. These lessons can help you stay inspired, express yourself, and introduce you to a community of millions, all for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. And because Skillshare is sponsoring this video, the first 1,000 people who click my link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, so there's no risk to checking it out for yourself, and you'll really be helping the channel in the process. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and I hope you all enjoyed this piece on Demon's Souls. I'd like to sincerely thank my patrons here. Without your continued support, I simply would not be able to continue doing this, and I can never thank you enough for allowing me to keep going. If you've enjoyed any of the videos and want to help out so I can keep making more, you can get things like early access to completely ad-free video uploads by heading to patreon.com/writingongames and pledging only what you feel comfortable with. I am immensely grateful for your support in whatever form it takes. Special thanks go to Mark B. Writing, Artyom Vitsyuk, Hokius, Ruth Knapman, Leah Chinello, Henry Milek, Bryce Snyder, Lucas, David Björk, Winter, Timothy Jones, Hebe Amori, The Nameless Guy, Tommy Carver-Chaplin, Dr. Motorcycle, Amigas, Shardfire, Rob, Anna Pimentel, Jesse Ryan, Spike Jones, Dallas Keen, and Charlie Yang. And with that, this has been another episode of Writing on Games. Thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I will see you all next time.